Well, it's not often thought of as a special sense because it's not taste, touch, hearing, vision, or the one I'm missing. Equilibrium is considered one of the special senses. Smell, that's the other one. But it is considered a special sense, and so with that, we're going to talk about it in this video. And so here we've got the outcomes for equilibrium. When it comes to equilibrium, there's two ways that we can classify it. Static equilibrium, which is basically, where is my head at? Dynamic equilibrium is, where is my head going? So we're going to talk about each of these individually and how we sense it. Okay? So in both cases, static and dynamic equilibrium, they're sensed by mechanoreceptors. Okay? Static equilibrium is monitored by what structures called the utricle and the saccule. Okay? They're composed of hair cells that are referred to as macula. Okay? These hair cells extend into something called the otolithic membrane. It's kind of a fun word to say. Basically, the otolithic membrane has a bunch of crystals called otoliths. And so as you can see from this picture down here, okay, the hair cells extend into this membrane. There's crystals on top. What that means is that the hair cells are top heavy. All the weight is at the top where those crystals are found. So how do we know where our head is at? Well, these hair cells fall with the direction of gravity. So if I cock my head this way, those hair cells are going to fall this way because those crystals are going to go with gravity. And so this membrane slides over and does that. This causes the macula to either depolarize or hyperpolarize. Depends on the specific hair cell. And so your brain gets a bunch of information from all these different macula, and it says, oh, in this case, I've tilted my head to the left. Next, we've got dynamic equilibrium. Remember, this is where is my head going? Also sensed by mechanoreceptors, but in this case, these mechanoreceptors are found in your semicircular canals. You have three semicircular canals. Okay, there's one that's oriented in a horizontal plane, and then you've got two that are oriented in vertical planes. Okay, basically, if you remember from math, just think about it not just x, y, but x, y, and z. So a three-dimensional figure. All right. The semicircular canals ultimately connect to something called the ampulla. Okay, so the ampulla contains hair cells. And as the head moves, fluid causes the hair cells to move in the opposite direction. Okay, this is very similar to acceleration in a car. So just imagine you're in a car, you're driving down the road, the light turns red, you're going and you're not quite sure if you should stop or not. You make that decision to stop. Okay, when you stop suddenly, it feels like you're being pushed forward. What's happening is the car is actually pushing you forward, but that gets into some physics that I don't want to talk about. Whereas if you're at a stoplight and then all of a sudden you punch the gas, it feels like you're moving backwards. Okay, same idea, and that's what's happening with dynamic equilibrium. Similar to static equilibrium, what happens is as these hair cells fall, they become depolarized or hyperpolarized. They send information to your brain, and your brain goes, oh, I'm spinning my head to the left. Ultimately, we need this information from both of these types of sensory receptors to get to our brain so we can interpret it. And so the utricle and saccule, as well as the semicircular canals, send signals to the vestibular ganglion. And for those of you that have had anatomy, you can probably guess which nerve is going to be activated or that we're going to send signals on. So the vestibular ganglion release glutamate. We talk about glutamate a lot with special senses. This activates the vestibular nerve, and ultimately the vestibular nerve communicates with both the pons and the medulla so that your brain knows where your head's at and where your head is going. And so with that, can you do these three things? Can you describe the difference between dynamic and static equilibrium? Can you explain how each of these is determined or interpreted by your brain?